5 minutes on background.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody. Great to be here. I want to repeat the praise for Indivisible and all the great work you're doing. And there's party activists here and community activists here. This is what it takes. We've got to fight. We've got a big challenge this year. We need to do in 2018. We need to set the stage for 2020. We know what the stakes are, so let's get to it. I served for 8 years in the Pennsylvania State House, and while there I led the fight against the extraordinarily punitive Abortion Control Act that was passed in 1981. I led the fight on the floor against Stephen Friend and his conservative minions. I offered the comprehensive amendment from the pro-choice position that would have changed that punitive bill into a supportive bill promoting women's reproductive rights in Pennsylvania. Of course, my amendment was struck down. That bill remains a travesty to this day. And I wish the legislators would make changes in it now. It requires a 24-hour waiting period for women. Terribly unfair, very hard on women of lower income. It requires women to view state-written photographs and written material before they can exercise their constitutional right to choose an abortion. That's not the kind of government I want to see. I served for 6 years in the US Congress, and during that time I fought against the reckless Republican tax programs and economic programs that we see today on steroids under Donald Trump. I voted against 2 Bush tax cuts that were bad for the economy, and what did we see late last year? A Trump tax cut, unfair to the working class, unfair to lower income people, totally focused on the wealthy and the corporate world. Those priorities have to be changed around. More recently, I've served as taught as an adjunct professor at Temple University, and enjoyed that experience immensely. Wonderful to deal with young people, to hear their enthusiasm, to hear their excitement. But too many of them had to leave because they were struggling to pay the bills. Some dropped out because their parents couldn't handle the tuition, or they could no longer handle the crushing debt that is such an embarrassment in American higher education. So we need free community college. That is an opportunity that must be available to all, and we need to relieve that debt burden on our students. And we absolutely need to invest enough money into the federal loan program so that there's no interest on the federal school loans. We have the resources to do that. We should not use our children as a profit center for the federal government. It's not right. So there's a lot to do. I've done a lot in my background, 25 years in elected office. That has taught me one thing. We need to go right now and stop Donald Trump. This man is a danger to our society. He is a threat to our democratic values. I've got the background. I've got the experience in Washington to be effective on day one. I hope you give me the opportunity. That's it.
Let me advance the slide
Oh,
for
okay.
you.
All right.
All right, so that's background experience. So now, top 3 legislative priorities. 6 minutes.
Okay.
And Kim will hold up the yellow when you're at 1.
Excellent. Well, it's hard for me to believe that in 2018 we still have to fight for women's rights. But we do, because it has not happened after all these years. Now, I have fought, as I've mentioned before, for 30 years for women's reproductive rights, and as a state house member and a member of Congress, I sponsored and voted for legislation to promote pay equity, family leave, child care, a number of things that would allow women to succeed economically, to have richer lives, to have support for the child care responsibilities that they have. Most of that legislation when I was in Washington failed because we had a Republican legislature, Congress, and for most of my time there, a Republican president. I think we understand the stakes. We need to continue this battle. It's an embarrassing I've got a daughter and 4 granddaughters, and I cannot believe that they don't have the rights in reality that my son does or that I do. And that's got to be changed in America. It won't be changed just by legislators. It will be changed by indivisible groups and community groups and all of us if we pull together. We need to do more to fund education. We need more money for the public schools. I'm not an opponent of charter schools, but I want to put our money in public schools. There's not enough money to fully fund what we want to do. That obligation must be to the public school system so that every child in every neighborhood can get a good, solid education to advance him or her on a successful career and a happy life. We have to do a far better job with our funding for the higher education. The interest-free loans are badly overdue, and we've got to make sure that we allow our children to get out in the world free of debt and get into the entry-level jobs that they won't be able to take if they're paying off a huge debt, and quickly move up, learn the ropes, earn their way, and succeed in a very competitive world. They need a better education, a better funded education, and more support from the federal government. Thirdly, I want to fight for economic justice. I mentioned those Republican tax cuts and the bad impact they have on our society. The Republicans want to starve the beast. That's their buzz phrase, starve the beast. It means cut taxes and shrink government. And once you've done that, cut taxes some more and shrink government again. And at the end of the day, there's no money left for the priorities that we believe in. So I say, not just fight, starve the beast, but we need to have our own program of balance the budget and invest in people. We've got to get our fiscal house in order. We've got to balance the budget. Bill Clinton showed us how to do that. And then we'll have the resources to make the investments we want to make to promote education and health care, raise the minimum wage. We've got to fight for 15, long overdue. There's so many ways that we can improve our society, but we can't do it when the Republicans are cutting the resources, giving the benefits to the wealthy, and making the middle income pay all the bills. The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer, and we're stuck with the bills. That's no good. I've always been against that. I want to go back and fight for that, and I think the country is awakening that there's a new day coming. We got to send a message to Trump. Your time is up. Good people are coming in 2018. We're going to get you in 2020. If the Mueller report contains ultimately what you and I think it's going to contain, I'll vote to impeach him, I'll oppose him. We got to get him out of office, and do the right thing for the American people. You know what?
What?
That was my 1-minute summary as well.
That was great.
Cher is right.
That's it.
That's it. Cher is right because she understands how bad the Trump administration is on these issues. The appointees are horrible. The only way to stop what's happening in Washington in terms of Trump is to elect a Democratic House this year. And then we can stand up. We can fund it properly, or fight with Trump over it. In the Senate, they can turn down his nominees. There's no other recourse but to get majority in at least one, hopefully both, of the houses to fight Trump on the environment. When I was in Congress, I fought to protect ANWR, the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. And that was a big battle, and we protected it. Bush wanted to drill there, but we were able to protect it. But that battle's been lost. They're about to drill in ANWR. It's a disgrace. ANWR is about 900,000 acres in hundreds of millions of acres where we drill already in Alaska. And it's a small, pristine coastline along the Arctic Ocean that is special for the caribou and special for its beauty to nature. It's those kinds of battles we have to get back after, win them, one by one, reverse what Trump has done, and make him understand how important we think the planet is. I think Pennsylvania's system of financing public schools is unconstitutional. It's based upon property taxes, which don't reflect the ability to pay. We ought to switch it to income taxes, so when people retire and their income falls, their property tax would go down and their school tax rather would go down, but instead it goes up today. I sponsored legislation in the 70s to switch school funding from property to income. It's a tough battle, and many people have tried it. Governor Robert Casey tried it and was unable to get public support for that. But I think our system's going to be ruled unconstitutional by the courts, and then we'll have to do the right thing and put our school taxes off of property and back on income. I think school choice, I think it's doing more harm than good. I want to put our money into public schools. Some of the charters are very good. Most of them are average. Some of them are crooked and you know, filled with all kinds of financial irregularity, because there's a profit motive allowed to creep into it. When there's a profit motive, bad people do bad things with money. So if we could put new money into charter schools, that'd be one thing, and properly fund the schools. But we're not. We're stealing from the public schools to fund the charter schools. I don't like it. We've got to reverse that state law, and the federal government has a major role in limiting the damage that school choice is doing and making sure we fund the public schools.
So is healthcare a right or privilege, and then Medicare for all, or fix the ACA?
Certainly healthcare is a right. I favor Medicare for all. I favor that bill. It is the only way to get healthcare to everybody on an equitable basis that we can afford, and get all of the waste and red tape and overhead out of the system. We spend about 30% of our healthcare dollar now on insurance company profit and excess forms and bureaucracy. If you go to the doctor's office, there are more clerks there to handle the paperwork than there are nurses to give care. It's a disgrace. It works in Canada. I don't favor the English system. I don't favor socialized medicine. We don't have to own the hospitals. The doctors don't have to be government employees. But we should have a national health policy that is Medicare for all. Medicare works. Its overhead's about 2%. And try to take it away from our seniors. That and Social Security are the most popular social programs we run because they work. And so I favor Medicare for all. Great question.
Yeah.
I will continue to fight for gun safety measures as I did before. The statistics you offer are shattering and shameful on all of us. So we need to ban assault weapons. We need background checks for all sales and purchases. We need to raise the age to 21. I really like the red flag proposal that would allow the federal courts, and I'd rather the federal courts do it than the states, to go in and take someone's gun away if there's been a threat made or sign of mental illness, and then in 2 days or 3 days provide a due process hearing, and if a mistake was made, he or she gets the gun back. But the police have got to be able to move right away when there's a credible threat of some pending violence. This is long overdue. I fought next to Carolyn McCarthy on the floor of the House to fight for shutting the gun show loophole, and the battle still hasn't been won. The NRA could do so much good if they would just be a responsible organization and put their weight behind some sensible gun suggestions. I think that what citizens can do is to keep pressure on the NRA and certainly keep pressure on the elected officials. We have got to take action. The children in Florida showed us how to do it, and it works.
Great.
I believe our civil rights laws are fundamentally good. The ones passed in the 60s, passed in a different era, when things were better, government worked better. They need to be better enforced. Some things could be added concerning gender protection and choice and so forth. But what's happened, of course, as my colleagues have pointed out, the program is underfunded. We would do well if we would properly fund the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice and get people in there that believed in civil rights and defending the Department of Justice. So again, we need to change the administration. This is a political challenge and a funding challenge. So we need a new administration that believes in these laws and a president that appoints people who wants to support the defense of civil rights in America. We need to properly fund the programs that we have. That's not happening either. So you get back to needing a balanced budget so that you then have the money to do the things we want to do. The Republicans have hollowed out the government. They cut taxes, cut taxes, cut taxes, and then they say, well, we have no money to defend civil rights or to properly staff the agency. And they put people in charge that don't care. So I believe in government. I believe in big government. There was a day I might not have said that. I say that now. I believe in big government. Now, it's got to be smart. It's got to be honest. It can't be corrupt. But there is a role to play for big and resourceful and robust government and protecting civil rights and women's rights and minority rights is at the very top of the list. The reason we need a federal equal rights amendment is that would require the courts to apply what's called strict scrutiny anytime they review any legislation that is alleged to be discriminating against women. It would allow the courts to strike down those laws so much more readily, so much easier, whatever the right language is. It would not solve our problems, but it would give us a legal avenue to go to court and get that court to apply this strict scrutiny rule that makes it very hard to discriminate. So that's why it was important. I came of age in the 1930s. That's why it was so readily apparent in the 70s and 80s that why we needed it, and we have gotten away from believing in or fighting for the Equal Rights Amendment. It will be a priority for me. A tough battle for sure, but I'm going down there to fight tough battles.
Great.
Mary Jo is correct. We are all children of God. We are all equal. We have to be treated that way under the law, whether it's hate crimes laws or any other federal regulation affecting people. Everyone has to be treated equally. Everyone has to be respected. So I would give that a very high priority.